Hi, this is Laura Holyoke, and this is the second recording for the Trifocal HR frame. And I'm going to talk to you a little bit about families and groups and organizations. One of the reasons why, let's see if I can get this here. Whoops. So family and groups is what this second lens is called, namely because a lot of the literature that's pulled in from group dynamics comes from family systems theory. So we often interact with, and for some of us, we spend more time in our organizations with other people that we work with than we actually do our family on a weekly basis. So there's a lot of interpersonal situations that happen in the organization. So some elements that are included in this family and group lens. One is the stages of development. I'll talk a little bit about Tuckman's stages, and then boundary permeability. This comes back from our structural lens and can be easily applied to groups and teams and organizations. In-group and out-group dynamics. Task and maintenance functions comes up. I'm going to talk about that here, as well as trust and social capital. All things that are also very relevant to families end up being relevant to the groups that we work in. So the study of group dynamics. So the field of study within the social sciences that focuses on the nature of groups. It urges to belong or to identify may make for distinctly different attitudes, recognized or unrecognized, and the influence of a group may rapidly become strong, influencing or overwhelming individual proclivities and actions. So groups, there's been quite a bit of study on groups and the dynamics and the influence that they can have on individuals, that they can make individuals change their minds even when individuals know that it's not right, or to go in a different direction. So Kurt Lewin, and it's spelled Lewin, was really one of the fathers of group dynamics, and he wrote a lot of cool stuff. And organization development was actually built. He was one of the founding fathers of that. And you can read about T groups. You can read about Wilfred Bion's different groups, all in the area of group dynamics. So something that all groups need to face, and even organizations, but I'm going to talk about specifically groups, are task and maintenance functions, and setting the boundaries around those. So anytime that we have a small group that works on something, or even an organization and people are working towards the same thing, we have tasks that we need to complete, and we have maintenance activities that we need to complete. So task is simply getting the work done that is assigned, what we need to do to produce whatever that comes out the other end. So we're constantly trying to improve on the task and to do that task efficiently and with high quality. The other three areas have to do with maintenance activities. So one area is effective decision making, and then carrying out or implementing those decisions. Second one is individual response to group. So the capacity of the group to protect itself from harmful individuals, and then the capacity to care about one another in a group, to look out for one another, if you will. And then the third area is ability to resolve complex problems. That is a way that we have to keep up in a group, and to resolve internal conflicts, if you will. So we have to get along. We have to figure out a way to do that. One of the odd things is we have to do both of these when we're in groups. We can't just do task, nor can we just do maintenance. So the research shows that about 20 to 30% of our time should be spent on maintenance activities, those which constitute 75% of what looks like here, and that anywhere from 70 to 80% of our time should be devoted to getting a task done. So here's what happens. If a group is so focused on tasks then they're not maintaining the relationships. They're not focusing on how the work gets done. They're not focusing on decisions. And then the group falls into dysfunction, because then it can no longer complete the task because these other areas have not been taken care of. On the other hand, if a group spends too much time on maintenance activities, taking care of one another, protecting itself from others, or getting railroaded by an individual, not able to resolve complex problems, it's not getting enough task done. So you've probably been in and around, even in families where it's all task and nobody talks, and that's kind of a breakdown, or people argue all the time, or are constantly just in relations, and then nothing gets done. So another way to look through this lens. So one of the things that I often struggle with is meetings in and around my organization. So I want to encourage you to, if you ever get board, you can always look at the group dynamics around you. So you can observe how others communicate specifically. You can watch the frequency, duration, and content of verbal communication as it happens in a room. And who communicates to whom, and who makes eye contact? Do certain people only interact with one another when there's several people in the room? Do certain people interrupt others? Who tends to trigger specific responses in what other people in the room? So what are the also elements of the communication style that happens? Do people stand up when they address somebody, or do they look down? So what kind of style is going on? And then the nonverbal communication, what kind of gestures are made? What are the body postures? What do they look like? What have gesture anyway, and then the facial expressions that are made. So also you can see a lot of these things, especially in task building and maintenance and boundary management functions in groups, how this communication you can see pretty clearly, and it's kind of fun to do sometimes, and maybe entertain yourself. So next I want to talk about Tuckman's stages of development. Many people know that these are forming, storming, norming, and performing. 1965, it's an ideal group decision-making process. Here's what some people don't know. So forming is that a team acquaints and establishes ground rules, formalities are preserved, and members are treated as strangers. This is usually what happens in classes that we meet, or in team meetings sometimes, especially if they're at committees that we're on. So almost all groups, like quite a high percentage of groups, never get past a forming stage. So people come together, they're polite to one another, they get along for purposes of that meeting or for that committee, and then they go away. They might say hi to one another when they see one another down the road, but most groups stay in this forming stage. Because storming happens when members start to communicate their true feelings, but still view themselves as individuals rather than part of a team. They resist control by group leaders and show hostility. So not always bad, but it's more, I'd like for you to focus on storming as being really sharing honest feelings with one another. This happens in our relationships, in our significant relationships. And in order to really perform in families and what have you, that we have to get through a storming stage. And storming usually means that we have to be honest with one another, and it doesn't always end up with hostility. After storming comes norming. So people feel part of the team. They realize that they can achieve work if they accept others' viewpoints, that we're better together than individually, that we have some sort of synergy, and then move on to performing. So that's when a team works open, trusting atmosphere. Flexibility is key. Hierarchy is of little importance. And so also if you are in a partnering relationship, in a good relationship with somebody that's gone through these stages, oftentimes we go back through the storming, norming, and performing. So it doesn't, once you reach that stage, it doesn't stay in the stage of performing, but it takes constant work and effort. We have the Johari window back again, and here the Johari window really talks about, or it's, I want you to think about it in terms of how well that group communicates with one another. So if people know a lot about one another in the group, then they have a large, open, free area. So people know stuff about others, and they're able to provide support. They're able to provide humor. People don't have, the blind areas. There's been feedback that's been given, so it may become kind of lighthearted jokes here and there. At the same time, people feel safe enough and trust one another in that group to self-disclose and to expose more about themselves, to really trust that the people around them are going to take care of them. The excuse me, the goal in groups and in families is to have a very large first quadrant, a very large, open, and free area. So there's not hidden agendas, there's not big secrets going on, and as much as put on the table and honest and trust is, that's what makes a healthy group. So Lencioni is one of my latest favorite authors because he writes about organizational health, but he also comes up with, he's got a book called The 5 Dysfunctions of a Team, and they are these. They're inattention to results. That is, people just, in a team, they produce and don't really care about what the results are. Absence of trust in a group. Sometimes in working relationships, these are called hollow shell relationships. And it's the idea that you put on a game face and you don't trust anybody, but you smile and act as if everything's okay. Fear of conflict. So I don't want to cross anybody, therefore I'm going to just fear it and not step into that. Lack of commitment to what we're doing as a team, and not really caring then of the outcome. And then avoidance of accountability, and saying, well, you guys, this is what you guys do, when it should be, this is what we are doing. Some group dysfunctions. Many people have heard of groupthink, and it's the idea that everybody wants to get along well enough, so they go down a road and nobody really questions or plays the devil's advocate. They get caught in groupthink. An Abilene paradox, this is Jerry Harvey. I encourage you to read the Abilene paradox. It's like a page and a half, but it's the idea that people go along with the idea because they think that others want to do that, when in reality, nobody thinks it's a great idea to begin with, but nobody speaks up about it. So a third dysfunction is group hijacking. And this is what I studied in my doctoral dissertation. So group hijacking is a group archetype where an intact group, an individual or a group of individuals use coercive power. So they use one of any base of French and Raven's power coercively to either block the group from the direction that it's going, or to change the direction that it's going. And it's always out of the norms of that, so it's outside of the established culture of the group. So the group is a little bit like deer in headlights, which is why group hijacking happens. So peace out. This is the end of the second PowerPoint and the HR Trifocal Lens. Thank you so much for listening and watching.